Hello. In this video we'll be looking at how to put together a 2-channel sequencer rack within Ableton Live 12. It can be put together with intro, suite or the standard version. Doesn't matter, it's some very simple things being used here, but you get 2 channels of sequencing which allow you to make music like in the background or different other types of music. There's multiple styles you can get out of this. Okay, let's have a quick listen and then I'll show you how the rack works, and as always, if you're interested in this rack for your music, how to put it together yourselves. Okay, let's have a look what we have in the rack then. It may look a little bit intimidating. There's quite a few elements, but a lot of them repeat and the actual mapping isn't too difficult. We have here in the rack, we have at the beginning this first control. I'll come back to this one in more detail. This is the most important control, I think, in the rack. But basically we have these 5 here, these light orange elements. They control this upper rack, which consists of an arpeggiator, which generates notes. Then we have an expression control, which I've used in some of my earlier videos, previous videos. And what this does is when it receives a note trigger, it activates a step, which I then use to modulate the pitch. So this generates modulation effectively, and I can use those modulation. I've got it targeted here to the pitch to change the pitch in a controlled manner. And this here, this value 1%, is effectively, let's go here, this is the output range. So if I increase that to 5, and if I get this started very quickly, just if I close this range down, you hear it just plays a single note. Opening this range up is a little bit like an opening in a window. It then allows more modulation of the pitch here. So that's what's generating these new notes for the sequence. Effectively, when I just close that, have my finger on the keys, then I just have one note. So this generates pitches. They're then locked into scale here with this function here. This is now an E major pentatonic. That is controlled by these 2 general controls, which control this function on both sides of the rack. So I have a scale here as well, and they're both linked here. If I change that to F, I go back to the other one, we're now in F. So these are general controls which change the scale and the root note for the sequences for both. Okay, so yeah, we have the arpeggiator, generates notes. They're then used to generate even more notes through this and locked into scale. That's what's happening. Okay, so let's come back to this then. Top row controls this top arpeggiator. Bottom row is controlled via these 8 controls at the bottom here, these functions here. Okay, let's have a look then at the bottom rack. If I set this to 0, and this, maybe I should explain this control here. When this is set to 0 and I play a note on the keyboard, then I'm effectively sending my triggers through this lower arpeggiator here, this lower sequence. If I change this value, this is the expression control what I mentioned before. So this changes the number of steps, and this one here, this note range, opens up this little window here, allowing me to modulate the pitch here. So I'm just holding one key on the keyboard, but generating different sequences. If I go into the arpeggiator, my next control is the style. I can change this. Things will play back in a different manner. Now, I'll come back to this control. At the moment I'm on 0, and my finger's getting a little bit tired holding this. If I press a couple of keys on the keyboard, let's get a more interesting sequence. If I move this now to 64 or above, let's move to 64. I can now take my fingers off the keyboard, and this is all locked, and the sequence is playing. You can't see that, but I have my fingers off the keyboard. Okay, now I can just play with this until I find a sequence I like. Here I have the rate. For the sequence. Here's the note length. And this one, you'll see if I open this one up, the gate here is flashing. It's being modulated. I'll close that. Turns off the modulation. So we have a fixed length when this is off. Or I can get it to generate varying lengths, random lengths. Okay. Finally, we have two controls here. Now I press two keys on the keyboard to get this to play. If I had a lot of notes and I wanted some gaps in the notes, what I can do is I can either raise up these cut notes. Effectively they block the notes going through this whole system here. So if I move this right up, it turns it off. And as I bring it down, hear the note value here, at some point I will bump into those notes being played again. So I can do this from below, come up from below, or I can also bring this one down. So if I open that one up, this comes from above. So let's change the sync rate to 16ths. There you go. You start getting pauses in your sequence by controlling these two. You can also generate some variation. Okay, so let's open that back up and close that. We get the whole sequence. Go back here. Now, turn this off. The sequence stops. If I go back to 64, then I'm now playing this, the upper sequence, which functions in the same way. 64 all the way up to 126. Let's see if I can get there. I'll take my fingers off the keyboard. Oh, 125, sorry. Then it'll stop the arpeggiate. If I go to 127, 126, 127, I can now press the keys and they'll hold in a similar manner to down here. Here we have the same thing. Let's go to the upper rack. We have the expression control generating the notes and the pitches, scale locking it in, and again an arpeggiator. So I can change arp style like below. I can change the rate. I can change the transposition. I can change again the note length. And this one adds variation not only to the note length. If you look at the gate here, it starts to flicker. Hope you can see that. It's starting to flicker, so that's being modulated, but it also has a dual function. It changes this gate value here for the number of pitches being generated, i.e. the modulation for this. So this here can also allow me to change, open and close this gate, more notes coming through, or more pitches coming through, and also variation of the length. So that has a dual function. Okay, so let's go back to this again. We have then here, I start at 0. You always have to start at 0, and you introduce effectively a sequence for your lower sequence. You can keep your finger on the keyboard, set it up how you like, until you get something you like, and then we go above 64. That's locked in. Now I then find an arp I like. Maybe we'll make this a 7. Slow that down a bit. Let's slow that one down a bit. Above 64, I can play. Take my finger off. It stops. So I can, if I want, I can play arps over the top. Okay, or go to 127 and lock that in. And that's how the rack works. And then you can just play around until you find sequences you like. I say, vary, change your sequences up, style. If you want to, you can randomize them. Often you need to change the rates. They go a bit crazy. You can just generate. Let's go to this one. Okay. I hope that explains what's going on. There's a lot going on in the rack, but we'll get to that when we build it. You'll understand it then more. Yeah, I think that's good enough. You can. Oh, that's a terrible sequence. Let's see if we can find another one. So let's have a look how it's put together. Okay, so the first thing you'll need then is a MIDI Effect Rack. You can find that here, MIDI Effects, MIDI Effect Rack. Just drop that onto a MIDI channel. We'll open that up here. You'll have macro 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've renamed mine here by using the rename function. You can keep my names or use your own name. We'll need all 16 of the macros. Okay, so next we'll drop in the effects we're going to need. We'll start with the scale at the back of the rack. Then we'll use the pitch that goes in here. Then we have a second pitch in here, in front of this one. Then we have the expression control, this here, that goes in front. The arpeggiator. And finally another pitch. Okay, so we will close this for a second and expression control, and we will map these two controls here. So we'll map the root note here, and the scale, this user, we will map here. Okay, now we can come out of the mapping. Okay, so now we need to go to here, to the chain. Click on this little icon, opens up the chain, and we can right click and we can duplicate this now. So now we have the second one. Okay, so we'll go up to the top one and we'll remove one of the pitches. We don't need two at the back here, so we can just delete that one. So that the racks are identical, except this lower one has two pitches here and this one only has one at the back of the rack. 2 in total and 3 in total. Okay, so now we can go, I think, to the bottom rack. We'll stay on the bottom one and we'll set up a few things here. We need to set this one here to have a range of 0. And I'll explain what this does in a second. Let's just the arpeggiator we can look at now. I think there's nothing to set up on the arpeggiator. That's all going to be mapped. The rate is set. Yes, we can close that. The expression control, we have a few things to set up. We have to go to the bottom one and click here where it says increment. And we map this one to our pitch here. That's the first thing we have to do. Then we need to set this to bipolar. This we will map. This we will map. We can, I don't think this has any effect, but I always drop it down to 1. Then we have a second function here, this random, which we need to map. Actually, I need to open the arpeggiator again. We need to map this one as a target to our gate here. We also set this one to bipolar, but for this one we want the random at 100%. And the number of steps we leave at 8. Okay, so I think that's set up. We can close that now. Expression control. The pitch here, I don't think there's anything to do on that one. And this one we will map in a moment, so there's nothing to do here. The scale is also fixed, nothing to do there. Okay, so let's go to the upper effects rack on the chain here. We'll open these all up, but some settings to make here as well. On the expression control, go here. On the expression control, we're going to go back down to our increment at the bottom here, and we're again going to map the pitch on this one to here. We're going to map this target to the pitch. Again, bipolar here. The steps we will map, this we can drop to 1. Okay, just check that we will map as well. So that's complete. Now we go up here to the randomize, and we're again going to open the, we can close this actually, we'll open the arpeggiator and we will map this to the gate as well. And again, bipolar, this we will map, and the number of steps remains at 8 here. The random we need to increase to 100%, 8, 100, and bipolar here. Then we can close that. There's nothing we need to do on this pitch now, we can close that one. The scale is also set up as well. We don't need to do anything there. So I believe, let's just check the front pitch. Okay, so this pitch at the front as well, we also need to reduce this to 0. And we need to set, oh, that stays at C-2. So that's okay. Now we can go through and do some mapping. Here we go, let's go into our mapping here. I think we'll just go through and do the easy ones first. We'll map here the arpeggiator rate here. Now we're on the top of the chain, so this corresponds to these controls here. So we'll map the rate to the arp sync rate. This box here, the style, to the arp style. Then we have a transpose, which we map here to our scale at the back of the rack. Let's map that here. Then we have the arp note length, which is the gate here on the arpeggiator, this one. And then for the arp vary, we have 2 things in the expression control which we need to go into. So let's close the arpeggiator. We go to the increment here at the bottom, and we're going to map here this output range. And then we go to the rand here, and we're going to map here this modulation amount here. So we'll map that as well. For some reason it's not grabbing them. Okay, let's try again. And then finally we go back to the increment here, and we map these steps here. We map that one. So there are, for some reason it doesn't like that. Let's try that again. So we have those 3 mapped. So now what we need to do is we need to map this pitch on-off button here. This is the front pitch. We need to map this here. And we need to go into our arpeggiator and map this hold button here also to this ARP plus 64 button. Okay, so that's everything done on the top. Now we can go down to the next rack or the next chain, and we can repeat some of these things. We'll start then with this pitch here. We'll map this again to this control here, and also the hold here to this control. And we're doing this because we'll set up these values so that we achieve the function with this dial which I mentioned, where as you move through the dial, we'll set this all up with the values for the constraints. They'll be coming a little bit later in the video. You can pause the video and just punch all these numbers in here, and with those values you'll be able to set this function up. Okay, what's next then? We have the number of sequence steps, so we can go here to our, we can close the ARP. Well, let's do the ARP first actually, because we have it open. We'll do the rates here, which is the sequence sync rate here. Then we have the gate, which is the length here. And then we have to go into our expression control and close this for a second. We'll close the pitch here because we don't need that any longer. And we'll just work on these two. We need to click here on the increment at the bottom, and we're going to map this output range, this 50% here, to the sequence note range. Then we need the number of sequence steps here, and we'll map that to the number of sequence steps here. From the arpeggiator we have the style. We'll take that one as well here and map that. And then we need to go to our pitch at the back here, this final pitch, and we need to, let's just close this for a second so we can see. We need to map this low value here to the low cut notes, and the range here to the high notes here. And this basically blocks here. So as we increase these values here using these macros, as we increase these values, we achieve that blocking of notes coming through, what I explained earlier in the video. So we can block out notes in our sequence. Okay, so what do we have next? Now we have the length modulation, which if we go back to our expression control here, we can go here to the rand, and we need to take this here, this output range, and map that to our length mod. Okay, and so that's everything mapped now. I'll put up a screenshot with the values you need to punch in for these constraints here, and yeah, I'll let you punch them in, and then we'll carry on, test the rack, make sure everything's okay. So I'll see you in a moment. Okay, once you've got those values punched in, everything should work, so we can now try that out, make sure everything's okay. Let's have a look. Okay, so we just need to put an instrument at the back here. Previously I had the analog. You can use any instrument you like. I just had analog at the back of the rack. I was just using one oscillator. Turn the frequency down a little bit. Let's see what that sounds like. Let's try. Okay, let's try this bottom one to begin with. Make sure everything's okay. Make sure we've got, this is the range here. And the steps are these controls here as I explained. Well, that seems to be okay. So we can change the style here. Cut notes. Cut from above. Change the sequence rate. If you want to go faster than 1/32, then you just have to change that value here in your mapping. I restricted it to 1/32. Okay, what else do we have? The gate length here. And the modulation. Let's reduce that before we all go nuts. Yeah, we can modulate that. So that seems to be working. We go to 64 now. I should be able to take my finger off the key, which I can. That holds. Now I should be able to play the, let's put this up. Let's have a look what's going on here. Close that. Have a look at, go up here and have a look at the expression control here, make sure everything's okay. Okay, it seems okay. and this is the note length here on. That seems to work. Can we vary it? Yes, that's varying as well. Change our root note. Change our scale. That seems to work fine as well. Okay, now that let's see if we can. Arp style works. Yes. Speed. Okay, that's okay. Now let's just see if we go to 127. Yes, that locks. Okay, so everything seems okay. For the randomization, somewhat excluded here was the ARP here, the control for activating the ARPs. That was excluded. I believe I also excluded the pitch here, the ARP transpose. Then what else? Was there anything else I excluded? Let's have a look. The rates, they weren't excluded. Oh, I excluded these, the cut low notes and the cut high notes here. Those are excluded as well. Now you save your rack here. That will appear in your user library presets, MIDI effects, MIDI Effect Rack, and it'll be in there. That's where that will, and you can just drop it into any project you need to use it in. Okay, let's try this one here. Let's try. Okay, seems to be working okay. Let's try random. Seems to have worked fine. Okay, I hope this video has been useful as always. It's an interesting rack as always, so I enjoy making these things. If I find myself just playing around with them for an hour or two, then I realise I've created something I really enjoy. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed as well, and see you in the next video. Take care.